So we're here on onlinelabels.com, and this is their software called Maestro Label Designer, and you are only able to use this if you purchase labels from the website. I purchase all of my labels from Online Labels, and it gives you a certain amount of time for free with the software. For my first 3 to 4 orders, I was only able to get 1 month for free at a time. However, my last order was a little bit higher than it usually is, and they gave me 12 months free for the design software. So that made me really happy, and it's well worth it. It is my favorite design software that I've used so far. I did used to have Photoshop and Illustrator, and if you do have those programs, those would probably be the best to use for designing the labels. But in terms of if you're looking for something that is pretty easy to use and you don't have any of those design softwares, this is the way to go. So what I recommend doing first when you're looking to design for your labels is go to Etsy and type in candles, soy wax candles, coconut candles, and just look at the labels that everybody else is doing. Look at the really popular candles and the way that they have made their labels, and you don't want to have your labels be too busy, too crowded. A very popular thing to do right now that people really like are very simple and clean cut labels. However, if you do want to add lots of colors or different patterns or anything on your labels, you can still make it look really nice, but very legible. So you want to have your labels look really legible and very clean cut. So on this one, you can tell that they have a pattern, but they were able to add the white box over it, so it's very legible. If they were to try to put wording right over the image, then that would cause it to be a little bit hard to read and not very pleasant for the person looking at the candles. So a lot of candles like this, they have different patterns, and the fonts, everybody has different fonts that they use, and that's something else that you'll want to look into. So you can actually purchase fonts and be able to add it onto Maestro Label Designer and be able to use that on your labels. So I really highly recommend look into purchasing fonts that you want to use. You want to be able to try out as many fonts as you can that are not already on your computer or just typical fonts that a lot of other people use. So what I recommend is to go to dafont.com, and this is just a website where you can download different fonts. Now, you do have to purchase the licensing for these if you're going to be using it on something that you are selling, which is what we're doing when we're making the labels for candles. So you are going to want to purchase the commercial license for them, but you are able to test out multiple different fonts by going on here and just clicking download, and then you'll be able to upload it onto Maestro Label Designer, and that's really something I recommend doing. Fonts are everything when it comes to design. Something else I did want to make mention to everybody, and this is just, I feel like it's a personal preference thing, but it's also something that is going to make your design so much nicer and so much easier to print out, and that is just understanding the difference between a JPEG image and a vector. So if you're looking right here, this is like a JPEG image. So it looks really nice when it's a smaller size, but the second you try to stretch it out or size it to whatever size you want to, it gets very pixelated. So JPEGs are made up of pixels, and that's why you want to find vectors. So vectors, no matter how big you put the image, you are able to scale it without it losing the quality, and that's what you want to find when it comes to printing out onto labels. A lot of people I've seen will use JPEG image, which is fine if you're not going to be scaling it too much, but in terms of print quality, finding vectors is going to be the way to go. And my favorite website to find vectors is Creative Market. So on here, you're able to find so many different vectors. I mean, they really have everything on here. They have fonts, they have vectors, they have elements, they have icons, and you're able to go through and find exactly what you would want to add onto your candle labels and really try to make it as creative as possible. Even if you personally cannot design things that look like this, you're able to purchase it from somebody else who did and be able to use it in your design. So for instance, if you wanted to add an animal print to the back of your label and then do what that other candle did, I believe it was this one right, where is it? It was this one right here. So if you wanted to add the animal print and then be able to do a white box over it and you would be able to do that and make it a little bit more legible. And these are vector images, so you're able to scale them to any size. They won't be pixelated. They print out really, really well. Now that we've gone through the basics of kind of the pre-designing, we're going to jump right into actually designing it. So when you're on here, you're going to click Create New Label. This is the size of my labels that I'm using on my jar. So we're going to use this because I'm actually going to be printing this out and putting it onto a jar. So I'm going to click on this and it says select a design mode. So with this, you're able to design one label at a time. With this one, you can design the full sheet. So I typically just design one label at a time, and then it takes you right over to the actual label itself. So I like to, what you can do is you can press Control and press the plus button, and that will make the image a little bit larger so you can see it. So now we have a completely blank label. So I'm going to not add any vectors into this. I'm just going to make it very simple so that you know what you can add into it, and showing you that you can add text to it. You can add shapes, you can add images that you've added onto your computer. So here's some images. These were some icons that I was using for my business cards and for my warning label right there. So you're able to look up some clip art if you want to. There are some cute clip arts that you can add if it's something that you're going for the style of your labels, but you can add, upload your own vector images as well. This is where you can add text. So I'm going to go ahead and just add in a text box here. So I made up a company name. So we are going with, if this would let me, we are going with Sunshine Candle Co. And that's just something that came to my mind. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to find a font that I like with to be a brand. So one of the things that you can do is you can do a script font, which is kind of like that cursive font that you see people do. However, in this example, I do want to use that as the scent. So I'm going to make this more of a sans serif. So in terms of fonts, I'll show you guys what I mean by sans serif. So if you guys know what Times New Roman is, that's a serif font. So that is a very kind of angular type of font. These fonts are a little bit nicer than what you would find as like a Times New Roman or something like that. But what I like to do is I like to go to the sans serif fonts and pick one of these. I believe when I was doing this, I liked this one. So at first, when I'm looking at this, I don't necessarily like the way it looks. So you can actually play around with not only the size, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, but you can play around with the spacing. So this really kind of adds something else to the way that the font looks. It almost looks like kind of a little bit of a different font, and that's what I really like about it, and that kind of appeals to me. So I'm gonna keep that there. And of course, you can go through, if you don't like the way this font looks, there are many different fonts. I showed you on defont.com. You can be able to pick any kind of font you want and import it in here, so you can choose whatever font you want. This is just kind of for the example of the video. So I'm gonna leave that one there. That's right in the middle, and on here, as you can see, it will click into place. So it will click you into place right there, and that's the center. It centers it right there. And one thing to make note of is if you have this too far out and you're trying to center it, it's not centering it properly because it's thinking that it has more letters than it does, that it's, you know, there's text over here when there's not. So you want to make sure that you bring that down so you're able to actually center that actually in the middle. So now we are going to add in text for the scent. So I'm going to bring this one down here, and we're going to be doing blueberry patch. And so if we're looking at something like this, and I just kept this all the same, it doesn't really stand out. Even if I tried to make it a little bit bigger, I mean, it's cute. I don't mind the font at all. I actually kind of like the font. And of course, you can play around with it with the letter spacing and everything. But there's something about it that's a little plain, especially when it's the same font as the brand name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to script and handwriting fonts. So this gives you a little bit more of a different type of style on these. And something else I wanted to show you guys is you are able to click on this. So it says looking for more fonts. So if you click on that, it says you need to enable Adobe Flash Player. So as soon as I allow it to run, oh, you know what? I totally realized it's going to get rid of the design. So give me 1 second. I'm going to reload this and then take you back to the design. Okay, now we are able to see all of the fonts that I have installed on my computer. On my computer, it typically gets a little bit slower when I'm looking through everything. So if you guys have a faster computer than I do, then it'll probably go a little bit faster than this. But we are going to be looking for this font that I wanted to use for this example. We are going to be using this Wild Ones font. So this one I'm going to be typing in Blueberry Patch, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So it looks much different when it's smaller like that. So we're going to just make it bigger and we're going to bold it. So just going to increase the size to see how big I want it to be. So with that, I'll just lock it in the center and in the middle. So with this, because I'm not adding in any images or vectors or anything like that into this example, I am going to change the color of this. So it'll still keep a very simplistic style, but it will be able to add just a little bit of a different feel. So we're going to, actually I want it a little bit darker. You know what, we'll just do this one. And of course you can pick whatever color. You can go on this color wheel and be able to pick it. You are also able to, you can see the little dropper. So sometimes if I do have an image in the background and I want to take a color from that image to be the font color, you can go on and you can actually pick up that color and have an exact match. So we're going to go with this color for now, and I'm going to play around with where I want this to go. For now, you know what? I'm going to actually move it up here. I don't want it actually directly in the middle because I'm going to be making a little bit more text down here. So with this, I am actually going to choose the same font that I did for the brand name. So this is Capriola. So I'm going to add another text box. And this is where I'm going to be just adding in a little bit more details of, you know, handmade, the ounces of the container, and just that kind of stuff. So I'm going to change this back to, change that back, and then we're going to take it off bold and make it a lot smaller. So with this, I think I was having to take it down a little bit more, so probably around 7. And with this, I'm just going to do some basic made in Texas. And I'm just going to start putting these over here because I'm going to match them up to make it work with the kind of style that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to add these all on here. So made in Texas, we're going to do 100%, whoops, do 100% coconut wax. I'm going to grab that, put it right next to there. And be able to make it a little bit smaller for this spot right here. It's a lot of tweaking. A lot of what I do when I'm designing these labels, it's a lot of tweaking exactly what I want it to look like. And I spend more time on actually adjusting tiny little things about it than I do with actually coming up with how to format everything. So like the initial idea of it, I spend a lot more time tweaking just little things, like spending so much time trying to make these all line up and make it look as nice as possible. And we're going to put one last thing down here. So we have the ounces. I also want to put the grams. So 8 ounces, how much is that? We're going to do ounces to grams. So this is, I use this on Google all the time. So we're going to do ounces to grams. So we're going to do 8 ounces, and I'm going to round it up to 227 grams. So go back over here, 227 grams. Adjust this and bring that down here. Okay, now It looks a little weird like that, and it's not centered, and I honestly kind of want to make the font a little bit smaller. But what I wanted to do, kind of the idea of what I wanted to do, was add a line in between right here. So I'm going to hold shift, click, and pull down, and that will create a straight line. Now that line is very, very bulky and very thick compared to how I want it to look. So right up here, you can actually change the width. So I'm going to take it down again, and take it down again. And I like that a lot better than I did with the very thick line. And then we're going to grab this, if I can grab that, and see that's the middle. So that's the middle point that I want it to sit at. So what that is telling me is that I need to take this down a little bit. So I'm going to take these down to 6. The only thing I wish it did was that it would be able to kind of click in place and be able to kind of adjust these right next to each other. So these ones and these ones I want to be aligned, but for this example, I don't think I'm going to be able to sit here and make this as perfect as possible for you guys. But one thing I did want to show you within this design software is what you can do is you can group things. So if I wanted to group these together, I could go up here to group, and that way these will all move together. So if I wanted to move these like this all at the same time, I can do that. If I wanted to group these ones together and be able to resize it, you can do that as well. So I like that part of this design software. Something else I'm gonna do is I want to take this little line, which is so hard to grab, but I'm gonna take this if it lets me. There we go. And I'm gonna hold shift and I'm gonna bring this down a little bit just to make this a shorter line. And I'm gonna try to make this as evenly as possible in between the words. So I like how this looks right here. It's pretty simple. I like how there's a little bit of a pop of color. You can, as I've mentioned before, you can do whatever you want. This is just basically to teach you guys about vectors and how to look up, how to get examples for your labels. And if you go through this video and you're still just thinking, wow, I still can't come up with a design, I can't come up with anything, there is honestly no shame in hiring a designer. I would highly, highly recommend it, because the ultimate goal is to make your labels look really professional and look like something that somebody would want to purchase. And that will be sometimes a price to pay if you don't feel like it's something that you're able to do yourself. And there's no shame in it. If it's something that you don't like doing, or you feel like you can't do, or if it's stressing you out, don't do it. I mean, that's what there's designers, there's graphic designers and creators out there that you can even find on Fiverr and be able to have people design it for you. And that way you will eliminate the stress and still have a label that you really like. When you're ready to print, you're just going to go up here to print and click print now. This does recommend to open with Adobe Reader, download and print it out, but I haven't had any luck with that. I really just like to open it up directly from my browser and be able to print it out from there. So one thing that you'll see when you're looking at it from here is that it will automatically want to print out every single one of the labels. If you're just wanting to test it out, what I would recommend is to go back over here and click on multi-design. So this shows that all of the boxes are checked off for the design. So what you can do is actually click on blank, and you can only just select one of them just to try it out. So I recommend that to start out, because you will have a lot of formatting issues when you're trying to get it to format to your printer. That's a whole nother story. That's something that you can actually follow on here when it's your first time. It'll have the page setup, alignment wizard, and that way you can be able to actually format it correctly. And with online labels, they actually give you another label to be able to use that sheet to do a test printout. So when you're no longer needing to test out, when you're buying, let's say you buy 10 labels, or I'm sorry, you buy 10 sheets of labels, they're actually going to give you 11 sheets. So you kind of get one for free because they throw in an extra one to be able to use it to align it to your printer. So we're going to go back over here, click on open directly from browser, and it's going to only pop up for one label. So with this, I'm going to go up to printer. And I have it automatically set on my printer to my Dymo, so I'm going to change it to my printer, which is a Canon Pixma TS3100 series, and I'm going to keep it as color. Now, with this, if you just keep it like this is how my computer works. I don't necessarily know if this is going to look the same way on your computer, so I would definitely look at the different formatting issues. And actually, now that I'm looking at the label, I can tell that these are a little bit higher than that. So I'm actually going to go back, group these together again, and I'm going to take it down. My printer is already selected, and then I'm going to go to more settings, and right here I'm going to put this to default. So you can see there's a little bit of a change right there, and now I'm going to click print. All right, so as you can see, it printed it out fine, but it did cut off the 100% right there. So we're actually gonna go back over and adjust the font and adjust the way that it looks so it doesn't cut off on the sides. Okay, so this is something that I had issues with, and as you can see, even though this is the cutoff area, every printer is going to be different with what their margins are. So even though on here, it shows that the margins are cutting off right there, on my specific computer, it cuts off more of right here. So I want to make sure that I'm aligning this properly, that works well for my printer, and everybody's printer will be different. So in this example, I'm actually going to take off the 100%, and we're just going to basically say coconut wax. And I'm going to bring this back over. So we're going to try that again. So I'm going to change where it's printing out because I don't want it to try to print out exactly where I already had the design. So I'm going to make that blank, and then I'm going to put the design just right below it. So you can pick any square, but I'm just picking that one. And print now, open directly from browser, and it's going to pick that area right there. So I'm going to reprint this one out. As you can see, it looks so much better than how it did before. It's not cut off right there. So you definitely have to figure out what your formats are on your printer and be able to adjust accordingly. So this is the finished product, and I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. And if you guys are wondering, I will leave a link to these jars in the description box below, as well as to everything else I use, the labels, everything like that. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you learned something, please leave it in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as follow me on Instagram at MemoryBoxCandleCo, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.